You'd be surprised how many people walk into my clinic each week proudly claiming they eat healthy, especially when it comes to vegetables. They talk about frozen veggies like they've discovered a nutritional secret. They say it with pride, like just picking up a bag of frozen peas makes them part of some elite health club. So I always ask one question: which brand do you buy? And more often than not, they freeze. Most can't remember. They just grab the cheapest bag, the one on sale, or maybe the one with the greenest packaging that whispered natural through clever marketing. They think frozen equals fresh, that all frozen vegetables are sealed with goodness, that a bag of broccoli is just broccoli. But those assumptions, they're wrong. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why. Now, this isn't fear mongering. I'm not here to make you scared of your freezer. What I want is to open your eyes, to help you read beyond the label, to question the supply chain, and to recognize when your so called convenient choice comes with hidden costs. I'm going to walk you through 10 frozen vegetable brands that repeatedly fail to meet the basic standards I expect for health conscious eating, and I'll also show you 3 brands that genuinely live up to their promises. But before I call out any names, you need to understand the system I use to judge them. Because when I evaluate frozen vegetables for my patients, I don't just look at the name on the bag, I look at 5 very specific things. First, ingredients. Real frozen vegetables should list exactly one ingredient, the vegetable itself. That means a bag of spinach should just say spinach. That's it. If you spot anything extra like maltodextrin, sodium phosphate, or even so called natural flavors, then you're not just getting frozen food, you're getting processed food. Something happened between the farm and your freezer, and it wasn't good. Second, country of origin. This one's big. Different countries follow different rules when it comes to pesticides and farming. What's banned in the US might be allowed in China or Guatemala. What's illegal in Europe might still be sprayed in Mexico. If your bag of veggies doesn't clearly tell you where the produce came from, ask yourself, what are they trying to hide? Third, processing. Freezing vegetables right after harvest, what we call flash freezing, locks in nutrients. But if produce sits in storage before freezing, much of that nutritional value is lost. Sadly, most brands don't tell you when or how quickly the freezing happened, and that silence usually speaks volumes. Fourth, sodium. Vegetables don't naturally contain high sodium. So if you flip over the bag of frozen broccoli and see 300, 400, even 500 milligrams of sodium per serving, you know that salt was added, usually as part of a preservative mix or to enhance flavor. That's not a good sign. Fifth, testing. The best brands invest in third party verification. That means pesticide checks, heavy metal screenings, and independent quality tests. The worst brands, they just stay silent. And silence isn't a sign of purity, it's a sign of shortcuts. So now, let's get into it. Here are the brands that should make you think twice. Number 10, Great Value Frozen Vegetables. This is Walmart's house brand, and it owns a massive share of the freezer aisle because it's cheap. But cheap doesn't come free, it always costs something. In this case, it's transparency. These vegetables are mostly sourced from countries like China, Mexico, or Guatemala, but you won't find clear info on which farms or regions they came from. The label gives you almost no traceability. You won't see harvest dates, processing locations, or even details on pesticide testing. It's a mystery bag. What's worse, in the food logs I review, Great Value products often include added sodium even in bags that are supposed to be just vegetables. You'll find sodium phosphate in their mixed vegetable blends, which shouldn't be there at all. It's a processing shortcut, not a nutritional necessity. Independent testing has even shown these products carry higher pesticide residue compared to similar organic options. Quality fluctuates depending on who sold the cheapest crop that month. And when that's the basis of your food supply, consistency and safety take a back seat. I can't recommend great value to anyone watching their sodium, nor to those who care about exposure to agricultural chemicals. Number 9, Bird's Eye. Once a pioneer in frozen food innovation, Bird's Eye still carries that legacy reputation. But nostalgia shouldn't blind us to reality. Their products are now globally sourced, often blending vegetables from the U.S., China, Mexico, and South America. And no, the packaging doesn't tell you which carrot came from where. Most labels only say, distributed by a company in New Jersey, hardly helpful when you're trying to trace your food's journey. Even more concerning is their processing. Bird's Eye uses sodium based blanching solutions on many of their products. That means even plain green beans might carry 50 to 100 milligrams of added sodium per serving. That's not how green beans grow, and it's definitely not what patients with blood pressure or kidney issues need. And then there's the texture. Properly flash frozen veggies hold their shape and cell structure, but bird's eye vegetables often cook up mushy, suggesting long delays before freezing. Customer complaints about weird textures are common and for good reason. This brand leans heavily on nostalgia and convenience, but offers little in the way of quality transparency. Number 8, Pictsweet Farms. Just the name sounds wholesome, like a family farm out in the countryside. The packaging shows green fields and sunny skies, but don't be fooled by the visuals. Pictsweet is a large commercial operation, sourcing vegetables from industrial farms across multiple countries. Their down home branding doesn't match their global supply chain. And yes, you'll often find sodium where you shouldn't. Their plain frozen spinach sometimes contains sodium as a processing aid hidden in the fine print. Corn products, occasionally sweetened. Now you're turning vegetables into processed food, which defeats the entire purpose. The brand rarely shares information on pesticide or quality testing, even though they claim to uphold family values. But when my patients pick up a bag expecting something pure, they're often shocked by what the ingredient list actually says. Let's move on to number 7, Market Pantry, Target's in house brand. People associate Target with quality and they assume Market Pantry reflects that. But when it comes to frozen vegetables, the assumptions don't hold up. The bags tell you almost nothing about where the vegetables come from. Target is listed as the distributor, but the actual origin? Usually hidden. The reality? These vegetables often come from China, Mexico, or Central America, depending on where costs are lowest that month. There's no published pesticide testing, no heavy metal screening data, no insight into processing facilities. You're expected to trust the brand blindly, and that's not all. Ingredient additions appear inconsistently. One bag might contain only peas. Another might include preservatives and sodium without clear explanations. Mixed vegetable blends, in particular, often come with extra ingredients, while the front of the bag still shows clean, crisp images of plain veggies. That kind of labeling misleads the consumer. If you have to work hard just to understand what's inside the bag, something's wrong. Let's keep going because we're just getting to the middle of the list and things don't get any better. Number 6 takes us to Kroger's frozen vegetable brands, specifically Private Selection and Simple Truth. Now, Kroger is the largest supermarket chain in the United States. Their reach is massive, and their private label products fill shelves across the country under all kinds of regional names. You'll find these in more places than you realize. But just because something's everywhere doesn't mean it's reliable. Let's start with the standard Kroger frozen vegetables. These follow the typical house brand formula: global sourcing based on cost, little to no information about where the vegetables were grown, added sodium in many products, and no public third party testing data to give you peace of mind. Depending on where you shop and what week it is, your frozen peas might come from a farm in China or a supplier in Mexico. And the only reason you'd know or not is based on luck, because Kroger isn't offering you that information up front. The quality varies widely, and there's nothing on the bag to help you understand what you're really buying. What's especially disappointing is their Simple Truth line, which markets itself as the clean, transparent, higher quality option. It costs more, so you'd think you're paying for a better product. But the truth? It's often the same supply chain, just in a different wrapper. Yes, some of the Simple Truth products are certified organic, and that's one step up. But for the conventional ones that don't carry the organic label, you're still dealing with vague sourcing, unclear processing, and no published test results. The promise of transparency in the name Simple Truth doesn't match what you get in reality. It frustrates me because patients pay more for what they think is a higher standard. They want to eat clean, they want to make the right choice. But the brand lets them down by doing just enough to look trustworthy without actually delivering consistent quality or proof. Moving on to number 5, Green Giant. If there's a brand that feels like it should be a staple in American homes, it's this one. That cheerful, jolly green giant mascot has been around for generations. People grew up trusting this name, but a trusted legacy doesn't automatically mean trustworthy products today. Green Giant has changed hands multiple times, and it's now owned by a private equity group that focuses on profit margins, not agricultural excellence. And it shows. Their vegetables are now sourced globally from industrial farms. China is a major supplier, although you wouldn't know that from the packaging because most bags only list a U.S. distribution address, giving the illusion of a domestic product. You'll find sodium in places you wouldn't expect: green beans with added salt, cauliflower that's been preserved with compounds that don't belong in a vegetable bag, and mixed vegetables that include modified food starch just to improve texture. These are the kinds of shortcuts you take when the goal is mass production, not nutrition. I've reviewed these labels with countless patients, and they're always shocked. They trusted the name and assumed they were getting a clean product, but the ingredients say otherwise. And while independent testing has found pesticide residue in Green Giant products that exceed what I would consider safe for regular consumption, the company doesn't counter that with any kind of public third party verification. There's no reassurance, just marketing. Number 4 is Signature Select, a brand sold in Safeway and Albertsons stores across the country. This is another house brand that serves thousands of grocery locations, but here too, volume is the priority, not quality. Signature Select vegetables are sourced from wherever it's cheapest at the time. That means China, Mexico, Guatemala, and other countries depending on the market. Don't expect the bag to tell you much. Most just say distributed by Albertsons with no traceability back to a specific region or farm. That kind of vagueness should be a red flag. You'll often find added sodium in their products where there shouldn't be any. Their frozen broccoli, for example, frequently shows elevated sodium levels, and in their mixed medley blends, they sneak in natural flavors, which is often a placeholder for artificial or chemical flavor enhancers. The inconsistency is a major issue here. One bag might be fine, the next might have a completely different taste or texture. I've had patients report off flavors, weird textures, even strange materials inside the bag. That tells me there are quality control problems at the processing level. When your business model is built on low prices and high scale, it's not surprising that quality takes a back seat. But that doesn't make it acceptable. Now we come to number 3, Season's Choice from Aldi. Aldi is famous for its low prices, and yes, that's part of the appeal. But behind those price tags are decisions you might not want to support with your grocery dollars. Season's Choice vegetables are incredibly inexpensive for a reason. They source from countries like China, where agricultural regulations are drastically different from what we're used to in the US or Europe, and they don't make that obvious. The front of the bag might say Season's Choice in bold letters, but if you flip it over and read the fine print, you'll often find Product of China buried in small type, easy to miss if you're not looking for it. And that's concerning. Pesticides that are banned in the US are still legal in many parts of China. Heavy metals from contaminated soil and water are also a serious risk in some agricultural areas. Without rigorous, independent testing, those risks make their way straight into your home, and Aldi doesn't publish any third party test results for these vegetables. There's no pesticide residue data, no heavy metal screenings, no facility audit reports. You're flying blind. Sure, the price is tempting, but if you care about what goes into your body or into your kids' meals, you have to ask, what am I really getting for that discount? Season's Choice offers convenience, but it cuts too many corners, and that's not just a small trade off. For families with specific health concerns or people trying to heal from chronic conditions, this level of information silence is unacceptable. I've looked into these products extensively, and I simply can't endorse them, not when there are better, safer options just a few shelves away. Now, let's talk about number two, Members Mark from Sam's Club. As Walmart's warehouse counterpart, Sam's Club follows the same basic strategy, big quantities at low prices. Their Members Mark frozen vegetables reflect that same philosophy, massive bags, massive cost savings, and unfortunately, massive quality compromises. You might think buying in bulk is the smart move, and for some things, it is. But when it comes to frozen vegetables, bulk can actually magnify the problem. You're not just getting more food, you're getting more of the same questionable sourcing and inconsistent processing multiplied across every serving. Like many of the brands on this list, Members Mark vegetables are sourced globally. Most of the supply comes from large industrial farms in places like China and Mexico, depending on the season and what price each supplier offers that month. There's no set standard across the board. You'll rarely find detailed information about where the vegetables were grown. Labels often list only a U.S. distribution address, giving a false sense of locality. And when you're buying bags this large, those small details matter even more. Once you open a bulk size bag, the quality begins to degrade quickly. Every time you open and close it, you expose the contents to subtle thawing and refreezing, which slowly breaks down texture and nutrition. By the time you get to the bottom of the bag, what was once crisp and intact may be soft, mushy, and unappealing. And that's just the physical quality. Let's talk about ingredients. Members Mark blends often contain things you'd never expect or want in frozen vegetables. Sodium phosphate, a preservative and texture enhancer, appears frequently. Modified food starch is used to give vegetables a better appearance, not better nutrition. And natural flavors, that's often code for masking inconsistencies in taste and smell. If the vegetables were handled well, you wouldn't need flavoring at all. But the biggest issue is transparency or the lack of it. Sam's Club doesn't provide any meaningful third party testing data. There are no pesticide residue reports, no heavy metal screenings, and no certifications available to reassure consumers that what's in the bag is safe. You're expected to trust the brand purely on reputation and convenience, but when you're buying vegetables in quantities that will feed your family for weeks, shouldn't that trust be earned? And finally, we reach number one on the list, the brand I most consistently advise patients to avoid altogether, Flavor Pack, along with similar food service brands that somehow end up on retail shelves. These products were never designed for your home kitchen. They were created for institutions, school cafeterias, hospital kitchens, correctional facilities, places that need consistency, long shelf life, and the ability to hold up under industrial heating systems. They're not optimized for nutrition, they're engineered for logistics. Yet somehow, these institutional food service brands have made their way into the consumer freezer section. Flav R Pack is the most common, but there are others that follow the same model. And once you understand what they're built for, it becomes clear why they don't belong in your shopping cart. These vegetables are processed with completely different goals in mind. They're expected to sit in warming trays for hours. They're designed to look uniform and hold their shape in bulk cooking. That means heavy chemical intervention, higher sodium levels, texture modifiers, and shelf life extenders that you'll never need in a home kitchen. Let's take sodium, for example. The levels in these food service vegetables often far exceed what you'd find in any standard retail product. That's not by accident. It's intentional to help them survive in institutional cooking environments where flavor and texture must endure long holding times. But when you cook those same vegetables at home, they come off as overly salty, overly soft, and strangely artificial. You think you're getting frozen spinach. What you're really getting is a product built to survive steam tables and hot lamps, not your stovetop. And it gets worse. Food service crossover brands like Flav R Pack have virtually no sourcing transparency. They sell under contract to institutions, not individuals, which means they're not held to the same standards of public labeling. You won't find information about farms, growing conditions, or processing timelines. There's no incentive for these companies to share that because their typical customer isn't reading the back of the bag, it's placing a bulk order on a procurement system. When these products show up in your grocery store, they bring all of those shortcuts with them, but now they're in your kitchen, feeding your family. I've seen countless patients who bought these thinking all frozen vegetables are created equal, that just because something's in a bag and in the freezer aisle, it must be nutritious. But that's not true. Not even close. Food service vegetables were never meant for individual consumption, and when they cross over into retail, they do so without adapting to the needs of regular households. Your body processes everything you eat, whether it's high quality produce or institutional filler, and while the price might look tempting, the hidden cost is something you'll feel over time in your energy, your digestion, your blood pressure, even your long term health. So at this point, you might be thinking, is it all bad news? Is there anything I can actually buy with confidence? The answer is yes. Because while there are plenty of brands that cut corners, there are also a few that truly deliver. They cost more, yes, but for a reason. They invest in quality agriculture, transparent sourcing, and clean processing. And when you compare what's inside the bag, the difference is obvious not just in taste, but in how your body feels after eating them. Let me walk you through the top 3 frozen vegetable brands I actually recommend to patients, starting with number 3. Let's begin with clean choice number 3, Cascadian Farm Organic Frozen Vegetables. When people ask me if paying extra for organic is worth it, this is one of the brands I point to. Cascadian Farm doesn't just slap an organic label on the bag, they follow through with practices that actually reflect the standards behind that label. The certified organic seal isn't just a marketing tool here. It guarantees that their vegetables are grown without synthetic pesticides, without harmful chemical additives, and in compliance with strict agricultural rules. That matters, especially when you're feeding kids, managing chronic illness, or simply trying to minimize the unknowns in your food. Now, does Cascadian Farm still operate within supply chains? Of course. No national brand grows everything locally and by hand, but the key difference is documentation. Their products must meet organic certification requirements at every step: growing, harvesting, processing. That includes regular audits, compliance reports, and sourcing documentation that you can trace. Many of their frozen vegetables list specific growing regions right on the packaging, so instead of the vague distributed by language most brands use, you get clear information about where your food actually comes from. That's what transparency looks like. Then there's the ingredient list. It's exactly what it should be. Spinach contains spinach. Broccoli contains broccoli. No maltodextrin, no sodium phosphate, no natural flavors, just vegetables. And when you check the nutrition label, you'll notice the sodium content is low because it's natural, not added. The texture of the vegetables speaks for itself. They're firm, vibrant, and cook well without turning to mush, which is a strong indicator of proper flash freezing soon after harvest. It's a visual and tactile cue that the product was handled with care. The premium you pay for Cascadian Farm isn't just for branding, it reflects real investment in quality control, sustainable practices, and verified standards. And yes, it costs more than Great Value or Season's Choice, but you're buying more than frozen vegetables. You're buying proof of better farming, better handling, and better oversight. For patients who want to minimize risk without giving up convenience, Cascadian Farm delivers on that promise. Clean choice number 2 is Woodstock Organic Frozen Vegetables. This is a brand that flies under the radar for a lot of people, but when you dig into their practices, you see why they deserve recognition. Woodstock treats transparency not as a bonus feature, but as a foundation. Their website provides sourcing information that most brands guard like a secret. They tell you where their vegetables are grown, who grows them, and how they're processed. That level of openness is rare in the frozen aisle. The farming partners they work with are not just suppliers, they're collaborators in a shared goal of sustainable, responsible agriculture. Woodstock's organic certification isn't just about checking the box. They go beyond the minimum. That means stricter oversight, deeper testing protocols, and a closer relationship with the farms that grow their food. Pesticide testing, standard, heavy metal screening, built into their process. These aren't optional steps, they're part of the commitment. And when it comes to ingredients, Woodstock sets the standard. Their vegetables are just that, vegetables. No sodium boosters, no texture agents, no added sugar. They don't try to dress things up or hide behind ambiguous terms. The product speaks for itself. What you see is what you get. Their frozen corn tastes like real corn. Their peas retain that slight snap when cooked properly. You can feel the difference in the pan and taste it on the plate. Yes, Woodstock is more expensive than many brands on the shelf. But again, it's not just about price, it's about value. For people who care about the integrity of their food, that value is clear. The company earns your trust by being open, consistent, and committed to real quality, not just the illusion of it. And finally, we arrive at clean choice number 1, Stallbush Island Farms. If you've never heard of them, don't worry, most people haven't. But in my view, they represent the gold standard for what frozen vegetables should be. Based in Oregon, Stallbush isn't just a food brand, it's a working farm. They own the land. They grow the vegetables, they handle the processing, and because they control the entire process from seed to bag, they offer a level of traceability that almost no one else can match. Unlike brands that buy produce from the lowest bidder, Stallbush knows exactly what went into every crop, what kind of soil, what kind of water, what kind of care. Their farming methods prioritize sustainability, protecting the environment, conserving water, and improving soil health over time. They're not just growing food, they're cultivating ecosystems that last. That's not just good for the planet, it's good for your plate. Their vegetables are flash frozen within hours of harvest, locking in nutrients before they have a chance to degrade. The result? Better color, better texture, better flavor, and better nutrition. You don't need to be a scientist to tell the difference. Just cook their carrots or broccoli once, and you'll notice it immediately. They taste fresh because they were treated like food that matters, not just bulk commodity. What sets Stahlbusch apart even more is their radical transparency. Their website is a masterclass in food education. They publish data on farming practices, processing steps, sustainability metrics, and quality testing. If there's a question about their product, chances are they've already answered it openly and clearly. And when you look at the label, you won't find anything suspicious. One ingredient, one vegetable, one source of truth. No additives, no flavorings, no chemical surprises. Sodium levels are minimal, just what the vegetable itself contains naturally. And every part of the product tells a consistent story. This was grown with care, handled with intention, and packaged with respect for the consumer. For patients who take their health seriously and want to know what they're putting in their bodies, Stahlbusch Island Farms is the brand I recommend most often. They don't just sell frozen vegetables, they offer peace of mind. So now that you've seen both sides of the freezer aisle, the brands to avoid and the ones worth paying for, let me leave you with something practical, something you can use right now. Because the next time you're in the grocery store or standing in front of your freezer wondering what you've actually bought, you need a system, a way to make quick decisions that actually protect your health. Let's break it down one last time so it sticks. Start with the ingredient list. This is non negotiable. A bag of frozen peas should contain one thing: peas. A bag of spinach should contain spinach. Not sodium phosphate, not natural flavors, not modified food starch. If you see anything beyond the vegetable itself, the product has been altered and not for your benefit. Additives don't just change the taste or texture, they change how your body processes the food. They add load to your kidneys, alter sodium levels, and introduce chemicals that your body now has to deal with. That's a cost no one includes on the price tag. Next, look at the country of origin. It should be clear and easy to find, not buried in small text, not replaced with vague language like distributed by. You deserve to know where your food came from, because growing standards vary, and the safety of the produce depends heavily on how and where it was farmed. If the country isn't listed, or if it's only mentioned in tiny letters near the barcode, that's not an accident. That's a choice to obscure sourcing, and that should make you pause. Then check the sodium content. Natural vegetables are low in sodium always. If you're seeing 300 or 400 milligrams per serving on what's labeled as plain frozen vegetables, that sodium was added, usually as a preservative, sometimes as a flavor boost. Either way, it wasn't there when the vegetable left the ground. And for people with high blood pressure, kidney disease, or cardiovascular concerns, this matters a lot. Even for people without those conditions, extra sodium adds up fast. Don't assume the numbers are harmless. Read the label, compare, choose wisely. Now, take a look at certifications. Organic certification isn't perfect, but it does mean the product went through documentation and verification steps that conventional vegetables often skip. It means someone had to prove that certain chemicals weren't used, that the supply chain followed a defined set of standards. It's not a guarantee, but it's a layer of accountability. And when a brand offers third party testing like pesticide residue reports or heavy metal screenings, that's even better, because that means they're not just asking for your trust, they're offering proof. Finally, consider the price and what that price really represents. Yes, better frozen vegetables cost more, But that cost reflects real farming, real testing, real oversight. The cheap brands cut corners in ways that don't show up at checkout, but do show up in your health over time. Saving $1 on a bag of vegetables might feel good in the moment. But if that savings means more chemicals, more preservatives, and more uncertainty about where your food came from, are you really saving anything? Or are you just shifting the cost to your future self? Your body processes everything you put into it. Every bite of spinach, every spoonful of corn, every forkful of broccoli, it all gets broken down, absorbed, and used or stored. The good parts and the bad parts, the nutrients and the residues, the fiber and the additives, nothing disappears. That's why the quality of what you eat matters, not just in the big picture, long term sense, but in the day to day. Your energy, your digestion, your immune system, they all react to what you feed them. And that reaction is constant. I'm not saying frozen vegetables are bad. In fact, they can be a powerful tool for healthy eating, especially when fresh produce isn't available, affordable, or convenient. But they're only a tool if you use them right. That starts with reading labels, asking questions, and refusing to settle for vague promises. The freezer aisle contains both health supporting staples and ultra processed shortcuts disguised as nutrition. Which ones you bring home is your choice, but it should be an informed choice, not a guess, not a gamble. So here's what I want you to do. Tonight, go to your freezer, pull out every bag of frozen vegetables you have. Read the labels using the 5 criteria we talked about: ingredients, country of origin, sodium content, certifications, and price. Ask yourself, do these products actually match the standards you thought they did, or were you misled by packaging, assumptions, and convenience? Then share this video with someone who still believes all frozen vegetables are the same, because they're not. And the more people know that, the more we can all demand better. Better labeling, better sourcing, better products. Leave a comment below and tell me which brands you've been using or which ones you want me to investigate next. This isn't about fear, it's about knowledge and the power to make decisions that protect your health, one frozen bag at a time.